Welcome back to QA Guru, your ultimate destination for mastering test automation and testing concepts. In this video, we're going to explore parameterization with the data provider. Instead of duplicating test cases or hard coding values, the data provider helps you keep your code clean, efficient, and maintainable. Here's an example. Let's say we want to test a simple login function with multiple credentials. Let's dive straight into the coding. Let's open the inventory test and let's implement the login test over here. So let me implement the test. Public void login test. And here we need the username and password. So I'm gonna add two arguments here. String username and string password. All right, now let's zoom it a bit. Now here, let's simply print the username and password for the time being. So let's have the println statement, and I'm gonna print username, and let's have the value username printed, and then let's print password. Let's add password here. All right, so we will receive the values username and password, and we'll be printing it over here. Okay, so we need to pass different set of usernames and passwords. All right, so let's make this method as a test method by annotating it with @test. All right, now we need to pass the values, right? So for that, we need to have another method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method which returns a two-dimensional object array. Okay, so let's check it out. All right, so let's name it as maybe login data, and let's make this return a two-dimensional object array. So let's have the return statement, and let's create a new object, two-dimensional object array, and let's define the values here. Okay, what are the values that we need to return? Okay, so we need to specify a set of usernames and passwords, right? So let's define the username first, John maybe, and let's have some password, alpha. Okay, in the next row, let's give another set. I'm gonna give the username as David, and the password as beta. And let's have one more row. Here you can say Sarah as a username, and let's give the password as gamma. Okay, and let's have the semicolon. Okay, so this method login data can return a two-dimensional object array. Okay, and each row defines one set of username and password. Okay, now in order to link this method into our test, what I'm going to do is I'm going to annotate this method with @data provider. Okay, and I have to give a name for this data provider. So there's an argument here, name, and let's give a name. I'm gonna give dp login. Okay, you can give any name here. That becomes the name of this data provider method. All right, and how do you link it with this? For linking it within @test annotation, you need to specify parameter data provider, and you have to give the same name, whatever name that you gave here. In order to make it as a data provider, you can use the same name here as a string. All right, so now these two methods are linked. Okay, now what happens is, like, when you execute this test will be executed for each of these row. Okay, so first of all, this will be executed with the first row. So John will be passed into username and alpha will pass into password, and this will be executed again for the second row. So David is passed to username and beta will be passed to password, and for the third time when login test is executed, Sora will be passed to username and gamma will be passed to password. So let's execute and try it out. Let's run it. Now you can see that it's executed, it's passed, and it's executed 3 times. Okay, for the first time when it's executed, it has printed username John and password alpha. Okay, so that means the first row is passed into this. Okay, it's executed once. In the second execution, you can see that David is printed as the username and beta is printed as password. Okay, and for the third execution, you can see Sarah is taken as the username and gamma is taken as the password. All right, so for every row that is specified here, the test method is executed. Now, you might be wondering why we defined the data type of this as an object two-dimensional array instead of why can't we make it as a two-dimensional string array, right? That's a valid question. Okay, so in this case, you can make it as a string two-dimensional array as well. That'll work. But in general, what happens is you can have different types of data receiving within your test method. Okay, so the first parameter could be string, the second parameter could be integer, maybe the next one could be float or double or boolean, right? Could be different. So in that case, what will be the type of data here, right? If it is string, it would be able to uh, contain only string type, right? If it's integer array, then it can contain only integer values, right? But the speciality of object is that it can contain any type of value, because in Java, every other type is defined out of object. So here, if you need to specify different types of values, you can freely specify that. So for example, instead of the string value here, if you need to specify an integer, you can specify that. If you need to specify a boolean value, say true, you can specify that one as well. So you can specify any value, any type of value within this object array. That's the beauty of that. The only thing is whatever type that you specify here, that should match with the argument that you specify in your test method. Okay, so it's better to define the data type as the object two-dimensional array, because then you don't need to worry about the type of value that you specify inside this, and you can match the value with the type of whatever arguments that you have within your test method. Now, in case your data provider method is in some other class file, say for example, you are creating a new class file and you are writing your data provider method over there. So in that case, when you link this data provider method to your test method, you have to specify one more parameter here. So you have to write data provider class, and then you should mention the class name over there. Okay. So in this case, since they both are in the same class file, you don't need to mention it here. It's optional. But if it's in some other method, but if it's in some other class, you have to specify the class name. So let's see how we can mention it there. So in this case, it's in inventory test class. So we can say inventory test dot class. Okay, so like this. I hope it's now clear how to implement parameterization using data provider, and I'll see you in the next video.